exalted, and his glory is exalted, and his glory is exalted far above the earth and sky. Fruitful trees and cedars, all ye hills and mountains high, creeping things and beasts and cattle, birds that in the heavens fly, kings of earth and all ye people, princes, reigners, judges all, princes and young men and maidens, aged men and children small, let them give Jehovah, for his name alone is high, and his glory is exalted, and his glory is exalted, and his glory is exalted, far above the earth and sky.
I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It wasn't my tomb till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb till I you call my name, and I ran out that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You call my name, and I ran out that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Now your mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom is all that I know. The old made new when I met you. You called my name, and I ran out that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. I'm breathing, I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you call my name, I ran out that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You call my name, and I ran out that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Amen. You can have a seat.
Good evening. Well, you're lively tonight. I got a few things. You got the handout. I'm not going to mention everything, but there are a few things that do need to be mentioned, I think. This Sunday, it's HFC Welcome Back for the WKU students, and you're encouraged to wear red. So we'll see what that's like, to worship in red. We've done that before. So Ryan will be speaking, and will be, I think, some of the students from HFC will actually be leading in the different parts of the worship as well. We have the Walk for Water. I don't know if are there still tickets. Is that still something they can get?
Yeah, I have 4. They can be bought at the box office.
There's 4 tickets left. Okay, 4. It's 4 left here, but you can still buy them at the box office. 50% of the money for the game on Sunday, it's this Sunday, we're here, will be going toward Walk for Water for Healing Hands. So that'll be awesome. Let's fill it up. I guess you'll be wearing red. even though I don't know that that's not, well, I guess we can. I hope that's not the other team's colors. But also, just the other thing is just a reminder that Brian and I are jumping off the Empire State Building. We're doing the Over the Edge on September, whatever it is, and we need money in order to do it. And as I've said, it won't hurt my feelings if we're a couple of dollars short, so I don't have to. But no, we are trying to raise a couple $1,000s for a great cause, the Child Advocacy Center. So we want to hope you can help with that. I don't know if the money's it's still out there. We'll get more information to be coming out. I've been remiss. I haven't got it on my social media yet. I got to do that. All right, and there are other things you can find in your announcements as well. It's my privilege to introduce my friend Chris Smith tonight, and I could take a long time with him from the others because I've known Chris not quite as long as I've known Russ, but I've known Chris for, I guess it's almost 30 years now that you ran in. I was speaking at Pepperdine. The way I met him, he was a keynote speaker, big shot speaker at Pepperdine, and I was the guy that lived in California, and they gave me a broom closet to speak in, and you had to really have a map to find where I was speaking or be interested. And of course at Pepperdine, when they have speakers, they have 10 or 15 at the same time, of which there's 4 or 5 really famous people that you got to figure out who to choose from, and about 10 that only the people from their church or relatives come to hear, okay? I was one of those. But I remember he had just spoken, and I'm in my broom closet with some relatives and some people from my church that I preached at, and here comes the keynote speaker, and Ken Naylor, who was preaching at Southside at the time, I think. And I was very intimidated, but it turns out he was actually interested in the subject, which I still remember was, I think I remember, it was unto the...
Was it Spirit?
It was about the Spirit, about following the leading or knowing the voice of God or something. I think it was, I lifted up my eyes. I said I'd know it, and then under pressure. But that's okay. We've determined that I'm coming down with something because in the prayer, Vicki had to remind me of her name, even though I've known her. So anyway, but he has been, some of you may know Chris. He's at Harpeth Hills. He's been there since for 20 plus years, 1997, I think. He actually grew up in the Mississippi, in the Memphis area, and he was a youth minister at Raleigh. Then he went to Okolona in Louisville, was the first place he preached. And he went from there to Duncanville, Texas, and he's been in at Harpeth Hills and Brentwood area for 21 years. And so he's a dear friend. Both of them are, and I do know Vicky's name. And Russ and Donna and the 3 of us, we get together every 5 or 6 weeks, and a different one chooses where we're going to go out to eat, and we go out to eat together. So we're kind of a three amigos couples, but we love them very dearly. So Chris, I'm going to take no more time of his. Chris, if you'll come, and we'll lead a prayer, and I'll give the mic to him. Lord God, we come before you at this time, and we praise you for the many ways that you bless us. Father, you are good and you're faithful, and I thank you for Chris and Vicki, Lord, and I just pray your hand be upon them and their work and their family, your blessings on them in every way, Father, that you continue to use them for your purposes. And now, Father, I pray that you would open our hearts and our minds, and that you would speak through Chris your words to us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Wow, that was sweet. I hadn't been called Big Shot in a long time. Well, maybe Vicky's called me that in derision. Oh, you're a Mr. Big Shot. But because I sure don't get called that back home, let me tell you. After 21 years at the same place, it's just Chris. It's not any of the accoutrements or anything like that. In fact, I had my 20th anniversary. I came to that church third Sunday in August of '97, and had my 20th anniversary last year, and it came and went, and they were like really didn't say much about it, and I didn't think it hurt my feelings until I started kind of thinking about it, and so I just decided to kind of sull up for a couple of weeks, and I felt better after sulling up. And so let me just mention that to you. If Kenneth gets to a nice round number, and if he's kind of acting like he's not expecting y'all to make a big deal, he's flat out lying. So if 5 is, you don't have to do any. In fact, let me just go ahead and lay it out for you. You really don't have to do much at 5. But at 10, if you're not putting the dogs out at 10, he's going to be really upset. So just go ahead and plan on spending a little extra money and sending him to, I don't know, Gulf Shores or Israel or something like that, and throw a couple of $1,000 at him. He'll feel all right. He'll be good for another couple of years. So, anyway, yeah, big shot. That's good. I got to tell him that. You know, our theme tonight is giving thanks. We're looking at a text from Psalm 136, and I certainly am thankful because I got out of an elders meeting tonight. And so anytime that I can come and miss 90 minutes of an elders meeting and get to go to another church, and somebody else is going to take me out to eat, and so this is pretty. I mean, this is an excused absence too. I mean, so like they know that I'm up here preaching the word, then I get credit for that. So I don't get dinged for missing the elders meeting. And in fact, I think they were going to kind of have like a spicy meeting tonight. I know a couple of things that were on the agenda, so I'm thankful to be here. This is great. This is great. When do elders meet here? Monday nights? Every third Monday night? Oh, we meet like 3 out of 4 Wednesday nights. It's awful. From 5 to 6:30. Okay, while I'm just sharing, because I've only got like 35 minutes worth of stuff, and I got to keep you till 7:30. So here's one of my pet peeves, other than forgetting my 20th anniversary, which I'm over, by the way. I'd want you to know I've worked through that. And is this like going to be online? Oh, great. That's just great. Hear guest speaker dog his home church. That's just wonderful. Well, they ought to be ashamed. What was I saying? So this is what I think I was saying. Oh, so do y'all rotate chairman? Well, here's the deal. Sometimes you get a good chairman, and then sometimes you get a crummy chairman. And the crummy chairman don't get you out on time. And we have a meal every Wednesday night at our place. Well, the crummy chairman, I mean, we were like missing our meal every Wednesday night. So we'd go right up till till Wednesday night Bible class. We'd miss the meal, just hack me off because I've been there all day, and I have to go to the meeting, and I got to go to Wednesday night church because I'm a preacher. And so he would run all the way up, and a couple of them are skipping. I don't know if y'all got elders like that. I got a couple of elders. I mean, once that elder meeting over, it's like bye-bye. I mean, they're not going to Bible class, which I'm not sure if that means. How does that work? So you're an elder, so you get credit there, but then you get credit taken away because you don't go to Wednesday night class. So that makes you like just a deacon, I guess. Now that I think about it. None of this is scripted, by the way. I'm sorry. I just got off on that anniversary thing. So you got me out of an elders meeting, and that is a great thing. I'm preaching on. I'm not to Psalm 136 yet. So I'm preaching on the church Sunday. And in fact, I'm teaching a combined class and then preaching at our 3 services. And I don't know what I'm going to say yet. But here's one thing you need to have pretty high up on your list of things to be thankful for. And that is for a good church. Because frankly, there are a lot of churches that are struggling, and there are a lot of churches that are unhealthy. There are a lot of churches that are jacked up. And to be able to be a part of a good church, like this church, like my church, that is, you need to put that pretty high on your things for which you're going to need to thank the Father before you go to bed tonight. To have a good church, to have a healthy church, a church that is certainly not perfect. Goodness knows my place is not perfect, but, you know, we're trying. We're trying to love Jesus. We're trying to love each other. We're trying to make an impact in the community. We don't always do the best we can, but you know what? Most of the time we do. And I certainly have been guilty, like all of my other preacher pals. You know, we get up on the wrong side of the bed, and we get up and we just lay into the brethren and just cut you off at the knees. And a lot of times when we do that, another little peek behind the curtain, a lot of times when we do that, it's because we're just frustrated with ourselves. And we take our frustration out on y'all. You know, and of course, y'all are guilty of whatever it is, but we're guilty too. But to be a minister for the Lord's church, this is all I've ever done as an adult. Sometimes is certainly a challenge, and sometimes it's heartbreaking. But most of the time, it's pretty dadgum cool to get to do this. Not just to get to come up 65 and preach to some other friends in another town, but to get to do what I do week in and week out. That's a rich, rich blessing. So, Psalm 136 is called the Great Halal. The word halal is just the word for praise, you know, short for hallelujah. And so do we have that there on the screen? Very first verse, there you go. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. And I love this. I love this about the Psalms, is wherever you are, there's a psalm for you. So let's say everybody in the room tonight, certainly not everybody in this room, you're not all, yes, this is great, I'm so happy and I'm so thankful, because your heart may be breaking. But there are other psalms for that. So give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. And I don't know if the people who put the Psalms together did this on purpose, but I think it's really interesting that you turn the page to the next Psalm, and it says, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, and there we wept when we remembered Zion. So you got 136, which is kind of a happy, clappy, blue skies and rainbows and sunbeams from heaven kind of song. But then the very next one is, I'm just crying. So I love that. The fact that there is a psalm for every person in the room. There's a psalm for every emotion and every emotional state. And the one tonight is a praise song. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and for forever his love. And I used a transliteration of the Hebrew because, frankly, I just think that's a bit better than my New Revised Standard, which says, for his steadfast love endures forever. Well, that's actually a little wordy. The Hebrew is just simply 6 syllables, ki leolam kasto, which is what we have here, for forever his love. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. So we're starting out with the fact that God is a good God. And our response is, for forever his love. Oh, give thanks to the God of gods. So verses 2 and 3, he's establishing the sovereignty of God. Give thanks to the God of gods, and give thanks to the Lord of lords. So however you want to measure deity, however you want to measure gods, I'm telling you, this God that we are expressing our thanks to, this God is the supreme God. He is sovereign over all other gods. All other gods pale in comparison to him. And so it is to that God that we sing our praise, for forever his love, who alone does great wonders. So not only is he the sovereign God, but he is also the God who does absolutely amazing things. And then it just proceeds to talk about, well, we'll just read it together here in a moment. You probably do not have this kind of person at your place, but occasionally we have people back at my place that complain about worship. And I'm sure that y'all just sent all the soreheads down to Tennessee and you just kept all the real Christians up here. But occasionally back home, we do have people who complain about worship. And one of these days, maybe like the year before I retire, one of these days, when somebody's complaining to me and they say, like I heard somebody say to a preacher once, and he claims this is his response, that the sister at the back door said, well, you know, I didn't like the song selection today. And the preacher said, well, that's okay. We weren't singing to you anyway. I mean, I just kind of wake up thinking, I wish I was that kind of preacher. I wish I could say that. That is so cool. I mean, of course, you'd move a lot if you talk like that. But I mean, wouldn't that just be cool to say, well, we weren't singing to you. Just bye, Felicia. You know, I mean, So anyway, we've got a guy back home who will occasionally complain. He said, well, I see we sang some of those 7-Eleven songs. Y'all know what that is, right? Sang some of those 7-Eleven songs, which is, it's a song that has 7 words and 11 verses. So you just sing it over and over again. I just wish, this is another one of these where I wished that the first time he said that to me, that I could have said, oh, you mean like Psalm 136. Because Psalm 136 is the original 7-Eleven song. Because he says, the congregation says the same thing over and over and over. Which, see, it's congregation. This isn't you in your car singing this song, you know, forever is his love. No, this is you singing it with the congregation. You're singing it with the person whose heart is brokenhearted, and you're singing it with the person who's filled with joy, and you're singing it with everybody somewhere in between. You come together as a congregation. This song would have been sung on one of those great festival days. And so the congregation most likely would have followed the lead of the one who's singing or chanting. It would have been some kind of chanting. And then they would have responded with these 6 syllables in Hebrew. So let's just read through it together. And you as a congregation, you respond by saying those words, for forever his love. So we'll pick up at this last verse. Who by understanding made the heavens, who spread out the earth on the waters, who made the great lights, the sun to rule over the day, the moon and stars to rule over the night, who struck Egypt through their firstborn, and brought Israel out from among them, with a strong hand and outstretched arm, who divided the Red Sea into 2, and made Israel pass through the midst of it, but overthrew Pharaoh and his army in the Red Sea, who led his people through the wilderness, who struck down great kings and killed famous kings, Sihon, king of the Amorites, and Og, king of Bashan, and gave their land as a heritage to his servant Israel. It is he who remembered us in our low estate and rescued us from our foes, who gives food to all flesh. Oh, give thanks to the God of heaven. So you can follow what he does here. He talks about creation, then he talks about the rescue from Egypt, then he talks about helping them through the wilderness era, and then he finishes up with, you remembered us in our low estate. So, starts with the first 4 days of creation. Doesn't go all the way through, just covers where he creates the light and the land and the firmament, and then comes back to the sun and the moon on days 4 and so forth. And so this is an occasion for the worshiper to remember that God is the creator. that God has done magnificent things. How many of you have been to the Grand Canyon? It's about, okay. Anybody who's been to the Grand Canyon will tell you something like this. It doesn't matter if you've seen an IMAX movie or you got a poster of the Grand Canyon like I used to have, or you've seen some kind of movie or slideshow or whatever. There's no way you can get a sense of the grandeur of that first time you walk up. And they got these rails everywhere. You walk up and you look over and it's, oh my. You can't get a sense of the perspective by looking at it any other way than just seeing it. And it is breathtaking. It is breathtaking even for the folks who aren't particularly, wired to notice nature. It just takes your breath away. So we're giving thanks to God. And a good place to start is as we look around our world. And when we're looking over that guardrail, looking down into the Grand Canyon, well, that's kind of easy. It's a bit different when we are trying to train our minds and our hearts to focus on, Vicki and I saw the sun coming up, orange glow this morning, saw the sun coming up as we're headed to the rec center about 6:15 or so. Or to express thanks when you get the first rain, when, I don't know if up here, but we went about 20 days without a drop. That first day that it rained, like, thank you, Jesus. So that's a great place to start, to adopt this attitude that we're going to be thankful, that we're going to say these words, oh, give thanks to the Lord. It simply is a matter of paying attention. A longshoreman theologian named Eric Hoffer said once, the hardest arithmetic to master is that which enables us to count our blessings. We can be surrounded by blessings, but we just don't notice. Week before last, I feel certain that I did not one day thank God that I felt good. Just never occurred to me. It's just another week. I probably thought more about, when are we going to quit having these 90-degree days? I'm so ready for fall. That's probably what I thought. I know that I did not one day thank God for waking up and feeling good. And then ragweed season hit me Saturday a week ago. And last week, I was miserable all week. And I do not, when my allergies have me down, I'd love to say that I soldier on. No, I want everybody to know that I feel bad. I didn't even realize how bad I was with that. One time in my middle 30s, and I've got big time allergies, and I'm talking with Ruthie, who was about 65. She worked there in the church office, and I didn't realize how much I'd been complaining, because one day Ruthie said, Chris, I just don't believe I'd want to be in the same nursing home with you. Okay. But I know. I mean, I just can. If you want to talk Zyrtec and Claritin and Flonase and allergy shots, I'm your man. I've gotten allergy shots in three different cities. In fact, see, this is what I'm doing. I'm proving my point right here. The first time I went to an allergist in Louisville, Kentucky, this had been about 91, 92, felt bad. I'd never had allergy shots, never had been tested or anything. So I go in and I just feel so terrible. And so the doc says, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to give you a steroid shot. Oh man! The next day, I just floated through life. It was like, is this what other people feel like? Is this what other people feel like during allergy season? I feel great. This is amazing. So anyway, back to last week. So I'm miserable all week. Going to bed at 8:30, the lethargy. You just feel so bad. And then about Saturday, I started feeling better. Well, guess what I prayed on Saturday? Lord, I'm thankful I feel better. Well, I didn't even feel as good as I did the week before when I wasn't. Why? Because we just don't think like that unless you're paying attention. If you pay attention, the blessings of even a regular old day are all but breathtaking. If you pay attention, which is the problem, because so often we just don't. We are so surrounded by a barrage of bad news. All the folks who produce news know that you're going to get a click if it's bad, and so that's why we hear about some tragic murder in Northern California. Have you thought about the fact that say like the last 3 really terrible murders where some husband murders a wife and children and stuff? Have you thought about the fact that 20 years ago, we wouldn't even have heard about that? That was just local news. They knew about it in Northern California, but that didn't make my home paper in Memphis. And now we see it 3 hours after they arrest the guy. And we don't really think through the fact that statistically we're less likely to be a subject of violence than almost any moment in our history of the United States. Murder rates, except probably for the city of Chicago, murder rates are down across the country, all the way across the country. But you wouldn't know it from what we read on our Twitter feed, right? So we're surrounded by a barrage of bad news, which causes us then to forget about all the goodness that surrounds us. There was a preacher back in the 1600s, which was a miserable in many respects century, Martin Rinkart. Supposedly, in the midst of the 30-year war, Rinkart, I'm not sure what country he lived in, and this sounds like a preacher count, but supposedly in 1 year, 1636, he buried 5,000 people. 5,000 people who lived in his parish, which I'm thinking, that number just can't be right. 15 a day. A plague and war. And in a hymnal from that era, you can find words that Rinkart wrote for his children, a little prayer around mealtime. Now thank we all our God with hearts and hands and voices, who wondrous things has done, in whom his world rejoices. So we got to pay attention. So he talks about the rescue from Egypt, verses 10 through 15. And if you remember anything about that era, you also remember that the people of Israel were griping even before they got out. Even before they crossed the Red Sea. Well, thanks a lot. I don't know if they said it in that tone, but it sounds like that when you read it. Weren't there enough graves back? You could have left us back in the land of Goshen. We could have died there. So I don't even know why you brought us out here to let's die out here. Thanks for nothing. Such a whining, complaining tone. And he's reminding them here that what? That it is God who rescued you from all that slavery down in Egypt. John Cheever once wrote, the main emotion of the adult American who has had all the advantages of wealth, education, and culture, the main emotion is disappointment. Sometimes in the midst of us having it so good, we come to also have a sense of entitlement. And this one just slips up on you. You don't start out to be a shallow, entitled, the world is supposed to spin according to my needs mindset. But we wind up thinking that, and we don't even know. When someone takes 20% too long to give us our food at a fast food restaurant, we act, maybe we act outwardly okay, but inwardly we're thinking, you can't get anybody to work these days. I tell you what, world is just going to... we have such a sense of entitlement that it causes us to look at the common blessings of each day and we don't even notice, because we just assume we deserve it. We deserve to wake up and feel well. We deserve to be protected. We deserve to have all of our needs met. We deserve to have employees who always are supposed to act the way they're supposed to act. We deserve to have a full bundle of cable. We deserve the fastest internet. We deserve it. That's just an absolute joke. But that's what most of us think. It's sure what I think. And when we put it this way, we all just feel a little, it's a little shameful, right? But that's what we do. We all but walk through life assuming that this is the way it is supposed to be. The Israelites were whining even before they got out of Egypt. A friend of mine named Charles Seibert, who went on to be with the Lord about 4 years ago. He was a longtime teacher at Abilene Christian. He was teaching a class I was in a decade plus ago. And he said this part of the story actually as an aside, because he was bragging on his preacher, a guy named Eddie, and what a great pastor Eddie was. And how one time when Charles's family learned what they thought was some potentially devastating news about a grandchild, Eddie came over he was like the first one at their doorstep. And Eddie was the preacher at a big church there in Abilene. But in the course of telling us and bragging about Eddie, he said, as his boys were there, he had 2 sons, both boys were married, and at that time, this probably was like grandchild number 2. I don't remember what they were fearful would be wrong with the child. But Charles looked to his little domain of his wife, Judy, and the 2 boys and the 2 daughters-in-law and the 1 or 2 grandchildren. And he had this deep voice. He had this amazing voice. And he said, remember, no whining. Seiberts don't whine. That'd be a pretty good family motto. Smiths don't whine. Except, of course, for the fact that I do it all the time. But I sure wish that I could measure up to the cool things I say on Wednesday night. But see, when we put it this way, it's like it's obvious. We're such bad people. One time I was preaching, this isn't in my notes either, but one time I was preaching and I was really riled up. And I remember what I was preaching about, but I won't mention that. But I was pretty lit up that morning. I was not lit. That's an alcohol. I do not drink, okay? I know most of y'all do, but I don't, all right? Y'all probably gonna go home tonight and drink, but I'm not, because I'm driving. So anyway, I was pretty fired up that day, and so I was going along, and I said, if you are, and then I filled in the blank with what I was really railing over. I said, you ought to be ashamed. Well, that didn't sit well with one sister. She came by to see me afterwards. I was meeting with people for prayer, and she came in to work me over, and I wanted to go, no, I just wanted to pray with you. I didn't want to hear your complaining. And so basically she said, and she was, to her credit or discredit, she was a wounded spiritual soul. She had grown up in a very shame-based household and church. And when her preacher said she ought to be ashamed, it really was like an emotional trigger. So, I mean, I got what she was saying. But it still didn't change my mind. I mean, sometimes the way we act, really, shame on us. No whining. And then he goes through and he talks about how he's worked with them and walked with them through the wilderness. So we get them out of Egypt. And then he goes through the wilderness and he talks about all these amazing things. And he talks about kings on the other side of the Jordan. Sihon and Og are both kings on the other side. And it's God who's always worked and gone through. And it's ancient history. I mean, it really is ancient history. But see, the thing is, it's their history. And then the verse that for me, you ever have this experience where you're like reading a passage? Maybe it's a familiar passage, which, by the way, I was just shocked. I've never preached on Psalm 136. I could not believe it. I mean, this is a killer psalm. I can't believe I've never preached on it. But the verse that for me kind of jumped off the page is verse 23. It is He who remembered us in our low estate, and He rescued us from our foes. He remembered us in our low estate. Can you remember a time where God remembered you in a low estate? Can you remember that time when it really did seem like God rescued you? And how thankful you were. I mean, you were thankful about everything. You noticed the flowers blooming, and you were patient with your 3-year-old because you'd had this thing, you'd had this moment. And He remembered you in your low estate. When our oldest daughter was around 10 or so, this when we're living in Louisville. So she'd been around 10 or so. And she got chicken pox. And growing out of chicken pox, she got something called ITP, which meant that she had petechiae, little bleeds all over her back. So her blood wasn't clotting right. And so we took her into the hospital, Children's Hospital there in Louisville. I think she was in the hospital for 2 days. I even remember the name of the medicine. I don't think the protocol is the same now, but back then they gave her a fancy antibiotic called gamma globulin and cleared her right up. So she's in like 2-3 days, and then we're home. But then we had to have follow-up visits, monthly follow-up visits, and she had to have lab work done to make sure that her blood was clotting correctly. And my wife was in nursing school at the time, so I drew the short straw every month. And so I took my daughter to the hematologist every month. And it was our first experience as a family of holding your breath, waiting for the labs to come back. A bunch of y'all in this room, you know what I'm talking about, right? You hold your breath, and then the tests come back, and then it's, then you go back, the next month. In our case, it was monthly. I hated going, because every time I would go, I knew that I was going to see a bald-headed child. My child wasn't. My child was probably one of the healthiest ones who went to that hematologist. But every time I went, I saw a bald-headed child. In those moments when he remembers you, it makes you so thankful. Which, of course, then begs the question, how come we can't live like that all the time? And I don't know, but it does make you wonder, right? How come we can't live like that all the time? If I had remembered seeing that bald-headed child monthly, the last time I was impatient with a server, or the last time I got bent out of shape about some dumb something or another, I would have immediately known, Chris, you straighten up. You know better than this. You are not that kind of person. He remembered us in our low estate. He rescued us from our foes. It's one thing to feel gratitude. It's another thing to express gratitude. And we can feel it, but this psalm is all about remembering to thank the one who has done all of this for us, who created the world, who rescued us from Egypt, who led us through the wilderness, who remembered us in our low estate. It's all about expressing thanks. The pilgrims, that first Thanksgiving, expressed thanks. Anybody had your child go through the pilgrim section in their early American history lately? Anybody remembered how many pilgrims survived year one? Half of them. There's about 100, 102. And about 50 celebrated the first Thanksgiving. They're saying thank you, and half of them died. It's this expression of thanksgiving. A man named Elton Trueblood, when he was 82, said, I find the one thing which I want to put into practice in my own life is the conscious and deliberate habit of finding somebody to thank. The person may be the driver of the bus, the teller at the bank window, the mail carrier, the clerk in the grocery store. In this fashion, gratitude can become a way of life. The greater blessing of maturity is that gratitude may transcend the single occasion. So, saying thank you. My wife has to get on me fairly regularly. And I hope that it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. I just don't think. Going through the line, getting our drugs at Walgreens the other day. Thank you. I mean, she's telling me, thank you, to say to the, thank you. William Stidger was I don't think he was a preacher, but he was with a preacher. This was early 30s. It's a long time ago, depths of the Depression. And he said, a preacher said, you know, I got to talk about Thanksgiving. I don't even know what word I'm going to say. And Stidger was feeling pretty blue himself. I don't think he was clinically depressed. He was just blue. And he decided, for some reason or another, that he was going to maybe kind of shake him up a little bit. He was going to just start telling people thank you. And for some reason, the first person he thought of was a teacher from years before, elementary school era. So he sent her a nice letter, and she wrote him back. And this is a part that it really does sound like a preacher tale. Could this really be true? And she writes him back, Dear Willie, thank you for your sweet note. I taught for 50 years. Yours is the first note I've received. Seriously? And then he said he wrote a bishop friend of his who'd been really nice to him. His wife had died. He wrote the note. He wrote him back, "Thank you for your note." It was so sweet. Before I realized, I had called out to my wife to share the note with her. And then I remembered she was gone. The power of a thank you, whether it's a handwritten note or it's a genuine thank you for the preschool teacher or the person. How many opportunities are there in a day to say thank you? It sure does seem like increasingly we live in a mean world. And we got an election coming up, and it's just going to get dirty and mean for the next 3 months. It seems like everybody's after everybody else's throat, and we don't have to be like that, do we? Can't we just be thankful people? We don't have to always prove ourselves right or be a smart aleck or be smug or think we know. How come we just can't thank people? How come we can't just be kind to people? Give thanks to the Lord. Have you had a moment? Well, I know you have. Can you remember the last time you had a moment where you were just overwhelmed with gratitude? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it just slipped up, and all of a sudden it's just washing over you. I don't know if this was my last one, but it's the most memorable one. My family went to Florida in June, and we have 2 girls that are grown. And between those 2, I've got 3 grandchildren and a 4th one on the way. And then we had another child much later in life. And so we've got a child who's a junior in university. So 2 girls in the 30s, a boy who's a junior, 2 sons-in-law. So we're all down at the beach, rented a house. You know, it certainly was chaotic. Oh, it was so much fun, but a lot of, it was chaos. And so one night we're going out to eat. And I already know this about myself. I know that I can just be grumpy. And I'd like to think it's just my cross to bear, but it really just means I'm a semi-bad person, but I just don't always have the best attitude. Because it's hot. I mean, you went to Florida like you weren't supposed to know this, but, it's hot and it's humid and you got to get there early. And, and good luck getting, can you get call ahead? No, you cannot get call ahead. And you got 10 people. I mean, they hate seeing you come up, party of 10. Oh. And so we get there and we have to wait like 45 minutes, and then you're looking for shade and trying to find some place to sit down, and of course, who's going to pay for it? Well, not those son-in-law, I'll tell you that. I've never seen 2 guys slower for the wallet. I just knew it would be funny. That's actually not true. But it sounded good, didn't it? And it's going to be overpriced. I mean, it was good food, but you're in the Panhandle. It's going to be overpriced. So I'm doing my best to be good, and I'm relatively successful. And then here's where the moment came. So I'm seated here. Matthew's best friend from high school is here. My son Matthew's here. The 7-month-old grandson, who's just beautiful, I must admit. He's a beautiful child. He's down here. There's his daddy, and there's his mama, who didn't get married till she was 32. She despaired she'd ever find the right one. And then I think Vicky's right here. No, Avery, the granddaughter's right here. Her daddy's next to her. There's Vicky. Then there's Burton, the 3-year-old, who has his first soccer game, 9 o'clock Saturday morning. So there's Burton right there. Here's other son-in-law here. Here's Andrea. This daughter's looking at her husband, and she's got one of those sweet looking at her husband looks. And the 7-month-old is he's just as cute as can be. Avery's coloring. Bertie, we call Burton, the 3-year-old, call him Bertie. My dad never really did like that. So here's Bertie over here, he's coloring. Andrea's laughing about something. And Vicky's laughing about something. And it was one of those moments where I felt like I had left my body and I was like looking down over it. It was a transcendent moment. Oh, dear God, I could not believe how good you've been to me. To see them all there around the table. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His steadfast love endures forever, for forever his love. Lord, thank you for the manifold ways in which you have blessed our lives. And Lord, for some of us this evening, it's a great evening. The kids are back in school and they're excited about their teacher and it's just a great time. It's just sweet as can be. And others of us in the room, Lord, we have to work a little harder for our Thanksgiving because it's not been a particularly good week. And the news from the doc was not good. And we're worried about a grandchild. We're worried about a host of other things. And for all of us, Father, those of us who are having a red letter day and those of us who are somewhere left of that, we collectively bring our thanksgiving to you. For you are good. We do believe for forever his love. For extending that to us, we thank you. In Jesus' name, and amen. Are we dismissed? Do we have to do something else official? Okay, you're free to go.